Hey guys, and welcome on into the next NHL season preview show. And today we're going to be talking all about the Winnipeg Jets, looking at their offseason additions and subtractions, coming free agents, a possible lineup, and then team and player future bets. So a lot to get to here when talking about the Winnipeg Jets. To do that with me, I brought Ryan at No Pepper Picks on Twitter/X. Make sure to go give him a follow. Ryan, of course, came on a few of the shows last year, including the Winnipeg Jets. So I brought you back to talk about the Jets again. Ryan, give the people a brief introduction of yourself if they haven't seen you before.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Terry. I'm a big NHL fan. I love the Kraken. I love a number of teams. I also love sports and handicapping. So you're welcome to follow me on Twitter. I give out free picks and like to talk sports.
All right, perfect. And yeah, we'll have you on for the Seattle show. I really like a couple of the moves that Seattle made. So, but we'll discuss that on another day. We'll start the show here by looking at the additions and subtractions. And one thing I noticed when I was making the backgrounds here for the Winnipeg Jets is they had a busy offseason and they have a busy upcoming offseason because they have a huge list of additions and subtractions here and another really big list of upcoming free agents. So this Jets team that won 110 points last year is going to look a lot different this year and likely a lot different again next year. So I'll start briefly here with the additions and subtractions. I'm not going to go through each guy. I'm just going to kind of group them into guys that I think are really important and guys that I think it's kind of fine that the Winnipeg Jets moved on from. And when looking at these two lists, the additions and subtractions, I have to say it's a bad offseason for this Winnipeg Jets team. I think they got worse here with the guys that they lost. First, the guys they added, especially with how strong this division is, with how many teams in the division improved. This is going to be a tough season, I think, for the Jets overall. Nate Schmidt got bought out right at the beginning of the offseason. So that's a defenseman who'd been with this Jets team for quite a few years, gone. Sean Monahan went to free agency. Kyle Capobianco, kind of a depth guy. Rob Brossois, who was in his second stint with Winnipeg, is off to Chicago. Colin Delia, who never played for the Jets all season long, he's gone as well. Tyler Toffoli, another offensive guy, he went to free agency. Brendan Dillon gone as well. And then most recently, the Jets had to move Rucker McGroarty, who did not want to play for this Jets team and made that pretty public. So he ended up getting traded to Pittsburgh. Braden Yeager came back from that deal. And then Rick Bowness retiring last season. So new head coach and Scott Arnell. We'll have to see how he does. Looking at the additions, Eric Comrie and Capo Kakinen haven't really had the best few seasons. Capo Kakinen was the best when he was with Minnesota. Of course, then going to San Jose, he is going to be playing in front of a much better defense this year. So we'll see how Capo Kakinen does, but I really liked what I saw from Laurent Brossois last year. And I think that's why Chicago went after him this offseason. The rest of the guys, Anderson Dolan, Hayden Fleury, Dylan Coughlin, depth guys. So not guys that are going to light up the score sheet. They're not top line guys. They're not top D pairing guys. They're depth guys. Mason Shaw played with the Wild for his whole career until this offseason. I love the guy. I love the guy. He's a great penalty killer, physical guy, great on the bench with his teammates, but has a really bad injury history, doesn't stay healthy. And again, he's a depth guy. So overall, in my opinion, here, it's kind of a bad offseason for the Winnipeg Jets here. I think um, they've gotten worse here, in my opinion, in the offseason. Ryan, big lists of additions and subtractions. Some teams have much smaller lists, not the Jets. Big offseason for them. What are your thoughts on their additions and subtractions this offseason?
Yeah, I tend to agree, Terry. I think most important news is Rick Bonus retiring. It's not a surprise. His health, his wife's health. Also, Scott O'Neill as a replacement isn't a surprise either. He was, um, you know, seen as the successor. He's in the organization. He knows the system. So, but I also agree that it's going to be a downgrade. Rick Bonus was a great coach. Was known for his defense. I think the defense suffers a little bit with his departure, but also because of who they lose on the blue line. Nate Schmidt. I think the writing was on the wall that he was going to leave. Um, you know, he was a healthy scratch at times, so he's not a huge loss, uh, but he had a lot of money tied up as well, so that hurts the Jets' ability to pick up some free agents. They also have money tied up in Blake Wheeler's contract, so there's other factors involved. I think the big loss is Brendan Dillon, and no one is happy to see him go. So he put in, I believe he played most, if not every game this past season. Was a great contributor. The writing was on the wall a little bit. He's, I think, 32 now, and the Jets probably weren't able to pay the kind of money that he was going to get as going elsewhere. And the Devils picked themselves up a really good player, so I think he's going to be a big loss. They and they sort of have a void on defense, and maybe some depth on forward. But I think if there's going to be a big change with the Jets this season, is they suffer a little bit defensively. And also, as you mentioned, in the Blackhawks preview show, Laurent Brossoit leaves. And so they, I believe, are going to suffer on backup goaltending. Capo Kakinen, probably not as good. Comrie, barring injury, may not see much playing time, if any. So I think they suffer on the backup goalie. And I agree with the additions. These are mostly complementary players. Hayden Fleury is going to have a chance to compete for that defensive position. He used to be in the Kraken organization. We'll see if he sticks around. Jared Anderson Dolan is a little bit of a project. He got cut by the Kings, goes to Nashville, doesn't see much playing time. So we'll see if he plays a part at all. But I tend to agree, and unfortunately I think the expectations for this franchise are going down a little bit, right? I don't think anyone really sees this team competing for the cup. And I think there may be a rebuilding in the future or kind of retooling, and we can talk about that later on.
Perfect. Yeah, we'll kind of talk about that in the next segment coming up with their off-season upcoming free agents. But yeah, this Jets team finished the season off on an 8-game win streak, had the second most points in the Western Conference. And I think that kind of surprised people to see the Jets finish so high. So we'll see exactly how they do this year, but not the best offseason. As I said, in a really tough division, too, because a lot of these teams improved in the offseason. Now we have upcoming free agents. And as I said, if you look at that forward group, they have a lot of guys that they will need to resign. We didn't touch on Cole Perfetti, who is an upcoming free agent this year. So they still have to sign him. Currently, the Jets have five, uh, 5.7 million cap space um, without signing Perfetti. So uh, we'll see how they deal with signing him this year. And then next year, a lot of these guys, upcoming free agents. So, Ryan, I'll let you start first with this one. Who do you think are the most important guys that the Jets should be focusing on re-signing this offseason?
So I think number one on the list, Nikolai Ehlers is probably their the biggest question mark going up in this free agent year. So he's a consistent 20-goal scorer. He may not be able to get the kind of money with the Jets that he can get elsewhere. So there's a lot of speculation that he could be kind of the one marketable forward on this team. And I could see a future where if the Jets are struggling, that he goes to a contender in midseason. We'll see if that happens. Um, you know, there's a lot, that to be determined. There's also like a younger core with the Manitoba Moose. So Brad Lambert is one of them. There's a number of younger players, and the development of their younger players could play a role in the future of this organization as well. And we can also talk about the long-term future, right? And a guy like Kyle Connor, who is sort of, kind of the big offensive weapon on this team. And the question is Winnipeg going to be able to hold on to him long term, in the 25-26 season? So, those questions are going to have to be answered. It may depend on how things go this upcoming season. Um, and I guess one other name I want to throw out on this list is Gabe Velarde. I believe he's 23, so he's quite young, and he could be like a cornerstone of this organization. So I think that's someone that's important for this team to retain.
Awesome. Yeah, obviously, if you guys look on the screen, you see Ehlers' face and you see Velarde's face. So I completely agree with Ryan. Those are the two main guys that the Jets need to focus on re-signing, of course, depending on how this year goes. I completely agree as well that Ehlers could be a good trade piece for the Jets if they are having a rough season. Um, he could definitely be someone that gets moved. Same with Iafallo, maybe Appleton, Nemesnikov. They do have guys here that they could move if they are going to try to retool in the next few years. Neil Pionk on defense, um, him and Sandberg. We'll have to see where the Jets go with him. Then Kapelkakin and UFA. I don't see I don't see the Jets rushing to the window to go and re-sign Kakinen. I think obviously with Hellebuck long term, they have him. Whoever is the backup on the team, I don't really think it matters too much to the Jets so far. Um, Possible lineup. So we kind of mentioned Cole Perfetti. He's in a different color here. Hasn't been signed as of yet. Uh, I'm going to assume we did see Seth Jarvis get signed uh, today or yesterday. So guys are probably going to be getting re-signed as these videos come out. So don't be surprised if before this video airs, Perfetti does get signed. We are filming a few days in advance. But looking at this possible lineup here, the top line is great. The top line is excellent. When you get to that second line, the Jets still do have depth when it comes in the forwards. I like that second line. Ehlers, we talked about, and because this is a contract year for him, you could really see improvement from Ehlers. Perfetti with the contract situation, how late does he get signed? Does he not get signed till sometime during the year? Does it happen before training camp? That will all kind of determine, I think, how his season starts. Nemesnikov was pretty good for the Jets last year. That third line with the captain Adam Lowry, Nita Ryder, and Iafallo, um, still a good third line. And then the fourth line, there's obviously guys that can move around. The guys in white there, Barron, Johnson, Fialbi, Anderson, Dolan will be fighting with Appleton, Gustafson, and Kupari for a spot. So when you look up front, the Jets have a good balance of guys up front. Defense, Josh Morrissey, their number one D by far. And then after that, um, DeMello, obviously on that top pair, Sandberg and Pionk, Stanley and Miller, Vinny Hiola. Question marks, I think, with with the bottom uh, D pair, but really there's a lot of questions with a lot of teams, bottom defense pair. So goalies, Hellebuck, starting goaltender, Comrie, Kakinen, from what I hear, are fighting, will fight for the backup spot. So we'll see who wins that job. But expect Hellebuck to get most of the starts here, I think, for the Jets again this season. I don't see much changing there. So overall, it's a pretty good lineup. It's not a bad lineup. It's just they are in a tough division. The Central Division is a tough division. Ryan, what do you think here about this possible lineup for the Jets?
Yeah, that top line is definitely solid. Shifley had a great turnaround this year. Credit to him, and also credit to the Rick Bonus system. He went from, I think, a minus 16 to a plus 19. So he had a really good year. Gabe Velarde missed 35 games due to injury, and so that had a cascading impact on the lineup. and Alex Iafallo filled in on that top spot, as well as Nikolai Ehlers. Um, so there's been some movement around these lines. There's a lot of solid defensive forwards. We've seen, that seems to be a theme of the Rick Bowness system. So like guys like Iafallo and Nemestikov are solid defensively. Mason Appleton is a solid two-way player. So there's a lot of defensive responsibility, in these lines. There's not a lot of room for players to come into camp and make spots. Like this is pretty solid, and I think even Gustafson got the kind of money that you expect from a guy to make the team. So these lines are kind of a little bit set in stone. Defense, obviously Josh Morrissey, is the number one, probably the second most valuable player on the team, behind Hellebuck. And if you were to sort of play GM, a big improvement in this team would be to bring someone to be a defenseman alongside Morrissey and put Dylan DeMello on a second line to lead a second line. But I don't know if the Jets are going to make that type of move. But that's sort of like the biggest glaring thing that you see from these lines. And Vinny Heinola, in white at the bottom, I think he's the future. I think he's going to be, he's expected to be a starting defenseman on this team eventually, and we'll see if that happens. I don't think there's any other names that I wanted to mention from this list, but it's unfortunately a little bit weaker defensively, and some solid lines at the top.
I totally agree. One thing about this Jets team, Hellebuck has to stay healthy. If something happens to Connor Hellebuck injury wise, this Jets team is in big trouble. Because when you look at Comrie and Kakinen, those aren't guys you want starting for you.
Mhm.
Um, really, a lot of teams really wouldn't want those guys as backups either. So the Jets need Hellebuck to stay healthy. Crucial for their season here is for Hellebuck to stay healthy. But then again, a lot of teams need their starting goalie to stay healthy. Looking at team future bets here, we'll go through this one here. The Jets, as I said, finished with 110 points last season, finished with 52 wins on an 8 game win streak. So they really went into the playoffs hot. Second, they came in second place for the division. Now they're plus 700 for the division to win the Central this year. A lot of the other teams, Nashville's plus three something, Dallas, Colorado, both plus 250, somewhere around there. So the Jets are, if you like the Jets, there's value with them here at plus 700. If you don't think the Jets are going to have a season where they take a step back, I've already said I do think the Jets take a step back. I don't think it's a giant step back, but this is a very tough division. Dallas, of course, um, has depth all over the team. Nashville made a bunch of improvements this offseason, getting two of the three biggest offseason ads in the offseason. Colorado could be getting Landeskog back. Utah is young and has a lot of talent. The Wild will have Jared Spurgeon back, which they hugely missed. Chicago made a lot of additions, so the Central team really, or the Central division really improved. So when looking here at the team future bets for the Jets, there's nothing that really catches my eye. I don't expect them to finish with the least amount of points in the NHL. That would be a shock. Um, no playoffs at plus 160 is a bit interesting, but they did have the second most points in the West last year. Now, while I don't think they're going to be like that again, they still have Connor Hellebuck, and he could push this team to the playoffs on his own. So no bet from the playoffs. 95.5 points. That's 15-point drop from where they were last season. That's a lot to drop. So unfortunately, guys, when it comes to team future bets here for the Jets, I don't have anything for you. I think it's a team that could still be somewhat competing for the division, but I could see them barely missing the playoffs as well. There's just question marks with this Jets team. Ryan, when it comes to team future bets, does anything catch your eye here for the Jets?
Uh, well, I guess in terms of the Central, I agree. It's going to be a tough division, but I also kind of like a couple other teams you didn't mention. The Blues is one of them, and another is Nashville, who did some interesting stuff in the offseason. So, though, it's going to be a tougher, division. I totally agree with that. I thought Winnipeg looked like one of the better teams in the league last year, and they sort of just didn't sustain it, right? Even with that nice run at the end of the season, I didn't really think that they were going to make a deep run in the playoffs. I didn't think that they were going to go down with a thud, losing to 5 games to a little bit lesser of a Colorado team. So I was surprised by that. Yeah, there's going to be a drop off this season. The other thing too is that Winnipeg is sort of a perennial playoff team. They tend to lose in the first round, but I believe 6 of the last 7 seasons they made the playoffs. So, it'd be a little bit of a surprise to see them miss it altogether, although they could, especially with injuries or with essentially an inexperienced head coach taking over. There's a lot of positives. The Pierre-Luc Dubois trade was really successful, not just because there was a big chemistry improvement with that trade. Pierre-Luc Dubois kind of flopped with the Kings, but they got Velarde, Iafallo, and Kapari. That's a really successful trade, and I think there's a lot of positives. But I'm kind of there with you. I'm not ready to jump on any of the bets, on this. And if anything, the big plus money on them missing the playoffs has a little bit of appeal, but it's a stretch. And that's with a good team with solid lines and one of the best goalies in the league. So yeah, nothing really appeals to me as well, from these futures bets.
Yeah, some teams people will love for futures. Obviously, teams that had big off seasons, teams that are looking to make a big jump. But teams like the Jets here, it's really tough to look at future bets for them based on where they're at right now. We will go to player future bets here. There's definitely some interesting ones here. I will start and we will talk about Gabriel Velarde first. Of course, you mentioned he did miss quite a few games last year. He only played in 47 games, had 36 points for the Jets, 22 goals. So his goal total here is 26 and a half. If he plays the full season, I like him to hit 30 goals. I think I think he could definitely hit 30 goals if he plays a full season. And as we mentioned on previous shows, and as I'll mention again here, when you're looking at these player future bets, you are looking for guys that will stay healthy. Now, of course, even guys that play 82 games, 3, 4 years in a row, injuries do happen, and that's just one of the things that happens in sports. But when you're looking at these, you kind of do want to bet a guy that you think is going to stay healthy. Velarde, of course, has not had a full NHL season yet. 63 games with the Jets or with the Kings, 22-23 was his most games he's played in this season. So he's not really somebody that I want to look at uh, for his goal total. But if you do like him to stay healthy, I like that goal total. Josh Morrissey here, 12 and a half. He had 10 last season in 81 games, 16 goals the season before that, 12 the season before that. So he hit the 12 and a half once. I would not be looking at Morrissey goals. As we all know, Morrissey is more of an assist guy. 60 assists last season, 59 last season, 60 the season before that. So he's been an assist guy. His total points here at 68 and a half, 69 points last season, 76 in 22-23. He's played at least 78 games in the last 3 seasons. So he has stayed pretty healthy. Morrissey points. I, if I was gonna play something with Morrissey, it would be the points over. but not something I pulled the trigger on. Again, I'm looking for teams that are going to take a step up. Because I do think this Jets team is going to take a step down, I could see Morrissey points going down as well. Kyle Connor here, 34 goals last season, 31 the season before that, 47 goals the season before that. So he's definitely hit this before. Only played 65 games last season. Total of 61 points last season, 80 the season before that. So again, Kyle Connor, if he plays a full 82 games, he should hit both of these over. But will he? Is the question. Mark Scheifele had 25 goals last season, 72 points. The season before that, he had 42 goals and 68 points. So Scheifele has been mostly an assist guy here in his career, but did have the 42 goals in 22-23, 38 goals in 18-19. So he can definitely explode for goals as well, not just assists. Nikolai Ehlers here, he's his totals at 57 and a half points. He had 68 points in a full season last year, 38 points in 45 games the season before that, and 55 points in 62 games the season before that. So Ehlers, again, needs to stay healthy. And then, as Ryan mentioned earlier, Ehlers could be a trade candidate. So he could end up finding himself on a different team. And when you're looking at a point total, obviously, if he is getting traded, it's most likely to a contender. So that would most likely be a pro if he does get traded. Um, no play for me there. And then Connor Hellebuck, 37 wins in back to back seasons for him. 60 games last year, 64 the season before that, 66 the season before that. So Hellebuck has been playing at least 60 games the last 3 seasons. 37 wins, as I said, back to back years. So now it's going down to 32 and a half. Um, I do think he's going to get a lot of the starts again this year. I don't think we're going to see his start total go down drastically, especially with the guys that are behind him. Um, but to take the over in the wins is tough when I think this Jets team is going to take a step back. So ultimately, I hate to do this, but I have no future bets with the Jets. Morrissey Norris, it's going to be tough for him with other defensemen that there are above him. Of course, Kel McCarr is the favorite, I think plus 250. So for Morrissey to have a chance, he's going to have an incredible year and probably need some guys to get injured as well. Hellebuck Vesna, plus 900. Not a bad look. If you do think the Jets are going to have a good season, if you do think Hellebuck's going to have a good season, then I would look at that at plus 900, but no play for me. Ryan, player future bets, a lot of them on here. Do any of these catch your eye?
Yeah, I don't have a whole lot to add. I would tend to think that the Jets get involved in more 5-3 type games this year, as opposed to like the 3-1 and 4-1 games they were involved in last year. I just think that with the loss of Rick Bonus, I think they'll probably try to keep that system, but I'm not sure if they're going to be able to. I also think that hurts um, Hellebuck as well. I think he really benefits from having the Rick Bonus system. The ones that stand out to me, as you mentioned, Kyle Connor with that really inflated goal total from a couple of years, it really makes it seem like that's an easy reach for him. Um, you know, also Shifley being on that top line and that being a productive line. Um, I like that as well. And Ehlers with being on a contract here, so those ones stand out. But I don't. I'm probably not going to make any of these wagers.
Yeah, nothing wrong with that. course, there's 32 teams, and a lot of teams have big lists like this. So you can't bet all these. And a lot of people might not want to be sitting on a minus 115 bet the whole season. But it is something good to look at. There are players that I will be betting um, in on different teams, making their debuts with teams, others that have already been with their team already. So there are definitely guys I'm going to be betting. But the Jets, there's just no guys here on this list that I like enough to pull the trigger on. But that is the Winnipeg Jets season preview show. Ryan, is there anything else you want to say before we finish the show?
I don't think so. Thanks for having me. Always a lot of fun.
Awesome. Perfect. Thanks for coming, everyone. Go give Ryan a follow at No Pepper Picks on Twitter. And thanks for watching, guys. We will see you all on the next show. Thanks, guys.